Alex, hello, and welcome to the Potential is Human podcast. Big thank you for taking time out of your day all the way in Mexico to share discussion with me. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks, Ryan. Yourself?
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. Alex, you sometimes refer to yourself as a non-dual informed coach. And
Hmm.
it's the first time I've actually seen it put across that way. And while I understand it, for somebody who may be listening and might be hearing about non-duality for the very first time, how would you go about explaining this from your viewpoint?
I think a lot of people out there are non-dual informed. They may not know it, or they may know it consciously. But non-duality is basically an understanding, is a pointer to something beyond concepts, but it's embodied in the world of form as an understanding of reality. So if I say something is non-duality informed, then what I'm really saying is that what informs, for example, in this situation, my coaching is hopefully a more deeper or truthful or harmonious understanding of reality, so that then the coaching or whatever you do that comes off of that understanding is a reflection of that understanding. And part of the non-dual understanding is that we are not just people born in a world of matter that are subject to birth and death in the way that we normally think. We often see how in society we see our bodies and minds as kind of machines, material machines. And of course, there's nothing wrong with this view in one way. In another way, you could say it's quite a limited view. Is there a deeper truth to who we really are? Non-duality suggests that we really are the whole appearance. We are peace, we are love, we are happiness at our very nature, in our very being. And that is the foundational starting point. So whatever is informed from that, whether it be coaching or anything else, would hopefully have more of that understanding injected into it, as it were.
Yeah.
So, the reason obviously why I would choose to do that is because if I'm going to do the coaching, which is part of what I've been doing, coaching, healing, I want it to be really, if it's going to be maximally effective, it's got to be informed by the deepest understanding of reality that I can get my hands on, as it were.
Yeah, brilliantly put. And it leads me straight into wanting to ask you something which has been on my heart for a while. You're probably the second person now that I'm actually discussing this with. But what is your view on coaching? Now, we know there's no right and wrong in the non-dual sense, but if coaching isn't informed by a deeper non-dual or spiritual understanding, right, pointing somebody to a essence of who they are, and it's just an
Hmm.
outward like pursuit of obtaining whatever outcomes we want to obtain, right? I'm starting to
Hmm.
feel more and more that coaching in that sense is actually compounding a lot of the challenges that we might see people experiencing in the world, because it can be lack-based desires, right, or fear-based desires. That's what really stood out for me when I saw non-dual informed coach, because what you were saying is that you are coaching from something far deeper than just what do you want? Let's go and get it for yourself.
Exactly, yes. Well, it's a very important and interesting question, and it's very relevant to today's time because we're being forced more and more to remove more of our biases about what we think is going to happen, about what we think other people should do, and start from a zero of principles thinking of the world, because there's becoming less and less things that we can assume. And coaching, really, at its purest core, isn't telling anyone what to do. It isn't having any biases or driving them either towards chasing peace and happiness or success in the future, or a non-dual awakening. It really is at its core, asking questions to raise awareness within someone else. Most of what I say I'm doing coaching. Really, I'm doing coaching and combined with a sort of a few modalities together. But it is very obvious now, and it's becoming more and more obvious that often as coaches there is that risk of putting that bias in there, of that, and specifically the bias, one of our strongest biases in society, these deeper things that we don't even question. We're thinking we're being completely unbiased, and then we make the assumption, we may make an assumption that peace and happiness or fulfillment or wholeness is in the future. And there could be the mistake of setting up the service around that, which becomes this perpetual chase, as it were. It reinforces the belief of being a person that needs to find wholeness or happiness in the future. And it starts to, it overlooks our true nature. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't, if we recognize our inherent wholeness and our inherent peace, we can also recognize that that is not everyone's experience right now. And they may say, okay, if I am peace and love, why aren't I really feeling it? But non-duality a non-duality informed approach, instead of placing those things out in the future, says this is already inherent. Okay, we can ask the question, why isn't it revealed right now? What can that be? What can be done to, there is still things to do, but it's a doing on behalf of the embodiment of who you really are, as opposed to not being enough and then trying to change who you are to then become whole.
Taking a breath there, because I know where we're talking to each other and languaging things from could probably be so there are ears who will be like, what are these two actually discussing? what we're discussing and what Alex is sharing is we're not separate. The beauty of who Alex is the beauty of who this appearance of Ryan is, and we would call that awareness. Some people call it consciousness. Alex, were you once on the chase that you briefly touched on there, right? Were you on the chase of your own, like seeking future outcomes and fulfillment?
Sure. Firstly, thanks for clarifying what we're talking about. This is what you're here for, to get it condensed down a bit more. Maybe I was too highbrow there, but to answer your question, yes, I've felt the great sting of attachment, of placing relaxation, peace, or a sense of completion into the future. I've done it in relationships and I've done it in business activities too. Sometimes on a big scale, sometimes in micro ways. I think this is how a lot of us progressively awaken in a way, because, or there is a progressive embodiment of that awakening, because it can sometimes catch you off guard. You may be exposed to a lot of material that has you feeling you very clearly awake to who you are, and you are aware. You become, if you really investigate who you are, you can become aware that who you essentially are is indestructible, is inherently at peace, and nothing that happens in the world of experience can disturb that. But then life will test that. Life will test that, and there can be situations in which the person is lamenting or grieving a big loss of attachment, but that isn't any obstacle to awakening or true nature. Again, we're not placing this out like you have to not seek and then somehow you're free. Even seeking appears in freedom that already is.
What led you to start finding, right? So obviously there was suffering, and you said you wanted fulfillment in relationships and in business. When I have that, then I will be complete, whole, happy, whatever it may be. what really was the catalyst for you? Was it a particular experience of suffering? Was it multiple where you were like, okay, I can't handle this anymore. There must be another way.
Sure. Well, the chasing, as it were, to fully answer the question, the chasing, as it were, starts. It can start. It can take lots of different forms. It could be, we do a cartoony form of I want millions or whatever, and then I'm going to be happy. Okay, you could say that. It could also be I'm trying to find a sense of safety. I'm trying to find like that I never felt in my childhood, for example. So there was, certain experiences that I had or in my conditioning that led me on a kind of path of trying to feel safe, to feel like, okay, everything's cool now, and I don't have to worry about whether the money's coming in, whether I'm going to go crazy, whether food's coming, all this kind of stuff. So you kind of get this existential safety, as it were. The setup for discovering the things that helped me see through that, it really happened in stages, all the way from like 15, listening to Alan Watts talks on Napster, which was an old school peer-to-peer sharing thing. And then there was a relationship breakup about 10, 12, well, no, that would have been 15 years, 18 years later, something like that. A great pain from a relationship breakup had a friend recommend me Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. So, Alan Watts, Eckhart Tolle, they both have a non-dual message at their core, although it's not as obvious as some of the teachers that I then progressed on to listening to, like Rupert Spira, Francis Lucille, and then digging into where obviously this understanding has come from, and the more orthodoxy side of it as well. So yeah, that was really my journey in discovering that, and at each stage there was a deepening of an understanding. It might have started with Alan Watts saying, where the earth peoples in the same as the apple tree apples, it's where we are connected to the earth, or we're like a wave in the ocean. I'm sure he gave much more eloquent metaphors, but and then Eckhart Tolle with the presence pointer, and so become present, don't think and be, there's a utility to that. There's a sort of a seeing with that. All of these things make you zoom out in a way and see the full view for a moment. But that gets progressively deeper until till the whole thing is really seen through in a way on a very ontological level. That's the
It's
deep highbrow bit coming in again.
Yeah, no, it's phenomenal the way you put it across. But what's also phenomenal is I feel a sense of I sometimes have the thoughts like, how did this ever happen? In my own experience, how did I ever find myself on this path? There was no I trying to find the path, right? It is the path. And
Sure.
I look at family and what a beautiful upbringing I did have. My question from this is, I wasn't raised in a non-dual sense strictly, Were you? How did you grow up, and was there a spiritual understanding in the way you were taught?
Uh, it wasn't clearly articulated. I personally didn't have any kind of teacher role for this kind of stuff in a teacher or message role coming from the family. But in a way, yes. I mean, in a way, people within, who were close to me when I was younger talk about love. And as soon as we talk about love, that I mean, it forces you to consider it, as it were. I've always tended to anything that comes my way. I'm like, there's this the person level me, as it were, has this tendency just to try and dig right down to the bottom of it. So maybe then when you are listening to someone like Alan Watts at 15, then he's talking about love, but on a lot deeper level. These messages, these teachings can come through in all other ways. So I wasn't specific. This is something that's my expression of this understanding has been something that's been put together in stages over a long period of time, over many different situations and different challenges and different awakenings, as it were. It's never a one and done deal. It's like continuous timelessness.
Yeah. Yeah. I sense the same in myself at the stages and the progression and the deepening, whereas we often hear the stories of like the one-off explosion, right? And
Yeah.
it's there. I can't relate in Ryan's journey to that one-off. Alex, now when you are working with people come to you and they want, is it guidance, would you say? Is it a space to you to reflect the questions that you need to ask and the understanding that you hold? How do you understand your role as a coach?
My intention is to create a container of unconditional positive regard. A space within which someone can fully explore the deepest, most existential things for them. Not all my clients want to go deep or existential. They just want the anxiety to stop or something like that. Some people want to go all the way to the nature of the universe. I'm not here to tell anyone what to think or what to do, although I do also provide tools in order to do certain things if people want to do those certain things. But I may offer up this understanding. I think a lot of people come to me, they know if I'm on YouTube saying things. I mean, the coaching container is a very different container because all of a sudden they can talk for the whole thing if they want. So there is a kind of natural setup of like, that is mostly how people have seen me, is that it's been a one-way conversation. And a lot of people expect those, so they do expect those offerings, but they're offerings to really say, check this out. Is this true in your own experience? That's the invitation. Is this true for you? I can tell you anything. It's just a belief. I can introduce bias. But if I make a proposition and you test out whether this is true for you, then you'll know. So if you get right down to the deepest notions of like, you are peace, you are love, if fulfillment is now, can we have conversations that investigate the truth of that? Are we able to actually experience that, as it were? Or is that truth able to be glimpsed and in a way like be embodied?
That word experience or experiential is massive, right? Because we can tell someone a whole bunch of things, and we've all heard a whole lot of things in our lives in terms of our conditioning and the societies we're a part of. But when something's an experiential understanding, it completely shifts everything.
Because it's the only thing we ever have.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Alex, you mentioned anxiety, and then you also mentioned peace and love. So what we're saying is, to anyone out there hearing this, you are peace and love. That's your essential nature. But someone's then saying like, but I'm experiencing anxiety right now. Let's have that conversation. How would you say that is understood? It's like, Alex, I'm so anxious. I'm constantly uncomfortable, yet you say I'm peace and love.
Yeah, it really comes about from investigating what we mean by those words. Because if we even use those words, those words even mean something or they point towards something. So let's look at what we might sort of think of. It's less about the definitions as well, and more like what we would tend to think of when we hear those words. If we think of peace, we may think of like not feeling any emotion or feeling positive emotion, and or peaceful actions and things like this. So of course, these are embodiments of peace in the world of form. But when we're talking about you, we're talking about something that goes beyond the body and the mind, beyond the world of form, you being consciousness, you being this whole appearance, this awareness unfolding.
Mm.
And the piece that we're talking about, being the nature of that, is a piece that goes deeper than any emotion you experience, experiencing, any thought you're experiencing. It is, shall we say, the piece that passeth all understanding. And you can experience that in a way that you can see, and I can invite the audience to investigate with me now. You can feel sensation in your body, physical sensation, which is the domain of physical pain and emotional pain. In your experience, not the idea of yourself as a person, but the very awareness, the very space of awareness that you are now, that this experience is unfolding within. Has that ever been disturbed by even the most strongest bodily sensation? It's not to say we want to experience those things or that we should experience those things, but let's start from the foundation. Has the space ever been harmed by the content, even if it's sometimes a fire or a great pain? And if you really investigate that, most people people come to this answer of no, of no. And from that foundation, and from that recognition, then more peace tends to be experienced on the emotional level, on the level of thoughts. Um, then you apply the same to love. We usually think of love as this, doing things for people or an exchange or philanthropy or a certain kind of attitude. And of course, all of those things can be an embodiment of love. If we say you, which goes beyond the person, beyond the body and the mind, and we say you as consciousness, as awareness, you investigate what is the experience of your true nature. Well, is it your experience that your true nature has accepted, in a way, loved and accepted everything that's ever been experienced? There is space has never resisted the content, including all of the thoughts that said, I don't like this, I don't like this. There's a loving space in which all that unfolded within, and it completely accepts everything. And it's love, if it's unconditional, would be immediate. And the only thing that is purely immediate is experience and awareness. The only thing that is truly unconditional is this appearance. Everything else is something that you have to get in time, apparently. So unconditional love is you. And when you feel, not another thing you can look at is, if you is when you are being your most loving, when you're acting your most loving, is that something that you have to get? You have to create a state. You have to achieve this kind of state of love. Or is it that is what you naturally feel and what you naturally want to express when you're not feeling fear? Is it something to get in the future, or is it something that's already here now? But if it's not being fully felt and embodied, then something is present that appears to obscure it, but doesn't really. In the same way as the sky is always present, the clouds appear to obscure it, but not really. The sky is still there, it's open.
Mm.
So it's really investigating those concepts on a deeper level, on an experiential level. And some of the ways in which I'm described is in the way in which there can be that experience of your true nature.
We're so blessed to just have these conversations, right? It's like, what world am I
Absolutely.
living in compared to like 10 years ago? Like unheard of, and now just such a gift. The sky analogy, I think I first heard that with Ramdas, the clouds in the sky. And you know what you're saying there is, even on a completely overcast day, like let's say you're so overwhelmed with emotion, fear, anxiety, worry, sadness, the sky is still there, untouched, never changed, no matter what storm appears.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and the sky has been there for every single storm. So if we talk in human understanding, it's no matter what I've experienced in my life, even the most challenging experiences, I have always been there.
Yes.
I in my
Yes.
essence.
Yes. Yes. That's it. Yeah. And this understanding will be more and more, shall we say, could say important, but it's really given an example, it always applies, and in a way, it's going to, in the world of humanity, apply more and more and more as things get more and more novel,
Mm,
because that is the way of the world of form. Is it is going to get more novel and in a way more challenging and overwhelming, but that's not necessarily a bad. It is also a massive opportunity within that, because it does force you to look deeper, especially, it's a very, very important time in human history. There was the wheel, the printing press, the telephone, the internet, and now AI is coming, and that is going to be an exponential difference when that really rolls out. So it's going to be this understanding is so relevant now, because it's showing us that whatever happens, we are beyond this. Whatever
mm.
overwhelm you experience whilst looking at the exponential changes that are happening, you are existentially safe.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it yet in the context of what we're seeing happening in AI. So let's go back to the sky. If this massive AI cloud is appearing, the sky is still there and you're safe,
Mm-hmm.
untouched
Mm-hmm.
by even AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the sky analogy as well, the weird thing about this sky is that when it knows itself as the sky and as the sun, then the clouds tend to clear.
Mm.
Or you get beautiful cloud formations. You see what I mean? And it's not to say that there is no specialness or unequalness. It's all ultimately all equal, but there is if this cloud is coming, it's going to be a dark, chaotic cloud. It would be a dark, chaotic cloud, and the observer of that would be completely caught up in that if they don't know themselves as the sky, as the space in which
Yeah.
that appears. If they know themselves as the sky and the space, then yes, at the very least, that you will know that the clouds can't harm you, and have the experience of that, even if the clouds are very dark and chaotic, will seem like that for a while. But also, but the chances are that is if you remain knowingly the sky, you remember yourself as the sky, actually what appears to be a storm will become a beautiful, beautiful cloud formation, a beautiful, or be a storm for a while and then clear and reveal a very, very bright sunny day. You know, ultimately, there's no attachment to either, but knowing yourself as the space, as the sky, as the peace, as the love, wouldn't it make sense that more of that would be, in a way, expressed in the world of form, and whatever expression that's taking, be it AI or anything else, uh, it would be more in line with that understanding, and so more likely to exponentially evolve, having been informed more by that understanding. So it is important, as we
Mm.
align AI, that we come together to really look at what is the true nature of reality, and how do we want to align us, what kind of understanding, what kind of ontology do we really want to align our systems on,
Mm.
if we
Alex,
value this.
yeah, when it comes to, let's say, decision making, or somebody's hearing us speak and wants to, like, what am I going to do next in my life? I either react from this fear and this stress and this worry, and then you're taking action based on those states, right? Or I want to be more loving, more accepting in your own life. How do you make decisions now? My understanding is that they're informed from that deeper place. But what does that look
Mhm.
like? So Alex has a decision to make. He can go left or right in his life. How do you come to clarity in terms of what is correct in a non-dual sense, which wouldn't be correct or incorrect?
Right. Well, the Alex is in a way making less decisions as time goes on, because as things develop, there is less and less uh, ability to reason even from first principles, to reason even from systems up, because even the average person now can look at what's going on, and they feel like, you see someone saying on YouTube, I'm 75 and it feels like my head's being sucked through a straw at the speed of light, and it's like, yeah, so it's like, if you're going in that direction, sorry, can you remind me the original question?
Just in terms of decision making in your life.
Oh, yeah, with the decision-making aspect, um, there is more of this like necessity even in the world of form to just allow the next spontaneous action to arise, as it were. Now, if there is the appearance of that kind of decision making, that selection, then at the very least, the narrative there can be, or the story there can be, what selection is more on behalf of the truth.
Mm.
If I am in fear of this, whatever I'm in fear of, is based on the belief of being a person who can be harmed or limited in some kind of way, and that needs to seek something in the future. And so therefore you're going to get more results of that belief. And when it comes to that decision making, you can see that when those decisions appear to come on behalf of that belief in limitation, that belief in separation, that belief in just being a person who has to do things, and you'll see like it's manipulative behavior, or strategizing, these kinds of things. And sorry about the background noise if you can hear that, but when you are just allowing decisions to come from this spaciousness and from knowing yourself as the openness, it's more like less of a mental personal decision and more of just this action that arises out of the spaciousness. and an impulse, and following that can lead you to incredible destinations that you would have never have even thought possible. You would have never even thought was that the strategizing personal mind that's trying to find some particular experience of pleasure or safety could have never have dreamt up in a million years. And we're going to see more and more and more that the reasoning from being a person, from systems up, from first principles is more and more out the window. It's going to be becoming more and more obvious because we're getting more and more of that feedback loop from the world of form as there's more novelty, that what we are believing and thinking and where our intention, our energy is aligned, and what understanding of reality we have of the world, we're going to see people getting more of those reflections. It's going to become more obvious to us that as we align, it's not so much a personal decision making, but it's more like an inner alignment of your overall intentionality, or sankalpa, you could call it, with your deepest understanding of reality, as it were.
I'm going to keep that nugget because you just captured it all so well. And it resembles that. Is this love-based or is this fear-based? I think of even this discussion. You know, I didn't know you and I saw one piece of your content on YouTube and I wanted to connect. There was a deeper knowing that there was inspiration flowing there. And then you agreed, not knowing me, but yet we can have a discussion which sends out so much into the world in 45 minutes. You know, how many ears could hear this? Where could it go? We don't know. But we could never have come to the calculation that you and I were going to have a discussion today. That would be a very limited view.
Absolutely. Like, I can look at someone's design, I can look over the podcast, I can get a general feel for something and make a decision based on that. But it's going to be a very limited viewpoint. I mean, you don't even have time now to just strategically take in like loads of data points. Someone reaches out for you to a podcast, you make all these different considerations. It's more like, it is more like you kind of go off the feeling and the intuition. And when you do, you just kind of know. You can pick up on someone's energy pretty fast, even through one email, just a quick look at something, and then you just, yeah, this feels right, this feels right. And then when you just trust that intuition, that is when you're sitting down with a person and you're going, wow, I'm having this conversation that is way beyond anything that I could like strategize up, like, oh, I want to talk to these people, I want to have this particular type of connection on this deep level. I'm going to be stuck in analysis paralysis. When you lightly hold an intention for connection in a space of openness and allow the next right intuition to come in, amazing things can just suddenly pop in. It doesn't mean that life goes perfect and there's never any challenges.
Yeah.
There still is. But you also have incredible moments of connection and mutual understanding, just opening up for the possibility psychologically, which is an embodiment of, you know, the separate self, the character, the Alex, the Ryan. We can never truly see our full self because it's infinite. You know, we are the appearance of the illusion. But you know, the more that you know, appearance recognizes ultimately that it is an illusion, ultimately that it is a dream, the more dream-like the appearance becomes.
Life is but a dream, right?
Absolutely.
Alex, thank you for your time. I really appreciate everything you've shared and just the opportunity to connect. So gratitude from me. I'll be in touch with you long after this call. And yeah, I hope you have a fantastic day in Mexico. Is there anything else you want to wrap up with and share?
I think we're good. Thank you for having me.